Welcome to Burn the Ship, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Today's episode is Brandon Dumbuya. Today's guest is Brandon Dumbuya, and I'm really excited about getting to talk to you. This is the podcast where we connect professionals and entrepreneurs with other professionals that can really help you go all in on your business. And Brandon's going to talk to us a little bit today about how understanding hard work and not being afraid to work hard has led him to some success at different levels in different things in his life. And most recently with Main Street Investments. Am I saying that right? That's the name of your company,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that's transitioned and those skills have developed into Main Street Investments and what you guys are looking to accomplish in the future. I met you at Real Estate Connections, and it was really exciting for me to, just be able to connect with somebody on that athlete level, on that entrepreneur level that is really looking to kind of make something of themselves. Tristan and I talk about all the time that there's a ton of people similar age range as us, similar background as us, similar skill set as us that are doing just so many unique and diverse things that we want to continue to leverage those experience with our clients and audience and podcast listeners as much as we can. So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you kind of got in, what you like to do, how you kind of got into what you were doing.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I'm an Atlanta product, born and raised. Not a lot of people that actually live in Atlanta right now are actually from here.
For sure.
Anybody from around here can tell you that. So I have a lot of pride in the city. I grew up on the east side, and I grew up playing sports. I was a pretty accomplished football player. And one thing about me, my family is from Sierra Leone in West Africa. I was born here. I remember the first time that I went back to Sierra Leone when I was 14. Just noticed the huge difference in just development, coming from the U.S. versus like a developing country. Just noticed that there was a lack of, I just infrastructure development, but I did know that there was a lot of opportunity. So I actually got interested in real estate back when I was like in high school because of that, because I wanted to be able to learn how to develop communities and take that skill back home. But I didn't know that you could just, get into real estate. I ended up going to college for engineering and play football as well. And then since then, I started getting back into real estate, reading up on it again, and then essentially rediscovered that passion and wanted to put as much energy and time as I could into it. And I started my company a few years ago. We started off in wholesaling real estate, and it was not a success. It was not a success. And I think the big thing about it was because I wasn't passionate about wholesaling real estate. It really was kind of somebody told me, this is kind of how you get into real estate, this is how you get started. But without that passion piece, it just wasn't a successful venture. And that's something I realized about myself is I can't just do anything for money. There has to be like an impact. There has to be a greater meaning behind just the profit. And since then, I've acquired a duplex. We did a heavy renovation on it, put about $65,000 in renovations. I'm in the process of refinancing that right now. So that was my first investment property. And now I'm working on a commercial deal. So just working on scaling up and getting to that next level. But it's been a grind, and I'm happy where I'm at.
Sure. How passionate were you about football?
Not that passionate, surprisingly.
Hmm.
Like people even are surprised now because like I played football, went all the way to the college level and played football. And I never really loved football. It was more so a means to an end. Like where I was growing up, if you wanted to be successful, you either played sports or you made music or you did some things that may not necessarily be legal. So I chose football as my route to get where I wanted to go. And from there, I was like, all right, if I can make money doing this, then I can start branching out of things I really want to do. But I was not that passionate about it. Even now, like I don't watch sports like at all. It's rare that you'll see me just watching a football game or any kind of game. So people
Sure.
kind of find that interesting because I played,
And you played at Tech, right?
yes sir,
Where'd
yes
you
sir.
go to high school?
So I was the cab.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yes,
So
sir.
that is interesting to me. That is very interesting to me, and it becomes one of those things where you look at like natural raw talent and athleticism versus like the desire to really be great at something. What do you see as the future really of Main Street Investments? Like, what is your end goal there? I know you talked a little bit about your experience in Sierra Leone, but What is that impact that you hope to have when you guys are kind of firing on cylinders like you plan to be in the future?
Yeah, so it's a layered approach. So I have two main passions, and you can kind of see in my background. Like I went to school for engineering, and there I discovered a love of technology and innovation. I already had a passion for real estate, so what I want to do with my life is marry those two passions into something great. So the whole process is, and this is like my 10-year plan that I developed a couple years ago. It's the first start off in real estate, start building portfolio, building knowledge, credibility, connections, and of course, capital. And then if you do that after a while, a few years, you'll start to learn a lot of the headaches that come along with managing a real estate portfolio, especially on the commercial level at that scale. And leveraging my technology background, I'm already working on technology for real estate. Like I learned how to code in Java when I was in school. So now I've been using that to create file or create programs that can manipulate Excel files. So even like what I'm working on right now is going to handle the financial management of the property that I have, the 2 unit. So I can read bank statements, pull in information, manipulate data, and then be able to output information that is key, like the KPIs, key metrics that I need to manage my property. So I want to continue in that direction. As I learn more and build my portfolio, I have more of a grasp on what needs to be built, and I'll be able to work on technology for real estate. So it's a real estate company, but it's also a tech company. But it's like creating the perfect marriage and having that balance. That's the long term goal.
Sure. And what's your other passion?
So that's it. Is real estate is
Oh, just
one,
both of
and
those things being married
technology is
together.
another one.
Sure.
In those two things that I also think are incredibly important in the future of real estate at any level are one, affordability. Um, like right now, the housing market is ridiculous. You can see the prices of houses going up, the rents going up, and it's leading to an access problem for a lot of people who don't make a whole bunch of money, but they still deserve and need somewhere decent to live. So affordability is big, and then also sustainability. If you look at just where the world has been going in terms of climate change, even if you look at like I don't like to get into politics, but the new administration, a lot of the things that they're driving is to the point where sustainability is going to be on every real estate investor's agenda. You need to be able to comply with laws that I foresee coming down the pipeline, and even to capitalize on incentives that I see that are going to increase in the future. So I definitely want to keep those two things in mind.
Sure. And how, what, tell me a little bit about for people that don't understand, what is the reason that the housing market and the real estate market is reacting to what's going on around us the way that it is reacting? How do you guys kind of plan to take advantage of that?
Yeah, so you're seeing a few different shifts in like real estate as a result of this pandemic. One, people are not as tied to major cities, like moving in or living like within the perimeter, so to speak. So they're starting to branch out. People are starting to move out to the suburbs because if they don't need to come into work every day or at all, then there's no need to be proximate. And then a lot of people have spent so much time at home over the past year, they're realizing that they don't like their house, they don't like their living situation or their apartment. So you see a lot of people wanting to buy houses or buy something new or move somewhere else. So they're investing more into their home life because they foresee, and I believe that they're correct, they're going to be spending more time at home in the future. Even if you're working, you're going to be spending more time working from home. So there's been a lot of real estate activity because of that. And then also the pandemic was very lopsided in how it affected people. People who are on the quote unquote bottom of society who made less money, they were the ones that had higher unemployment. You know, a lot of them were the ones that are feeling that financial struggle, whereas people who were more in the upper class, a lot of them were making more money. A lot of entrepreneurs, big businesses, or working professionals were making more money and spending less as a result of the pandemic. So then now you have one group who is making a lot of money and also interested in buying real estate. And then you have another group who really can't afford much. It's like it leads to that imbalance. You see prices going through the roof. and then like people who are at the bottom are kind of essentially locked out of being able to participate in that upside.
That makes that makes a lot of it makes sense, but tell me how it is that you guys
All right.
decipher what deal is good for, like, and you answered my question perfectly. What you're saying makes a lot of sense, but how is it that, as you're kind of assessing the market as tumultuous, is changing quickly, and there's this big rift that I don't know if is growing or shrinking. I don't really know enough to attest to
Mhm.
that, but how do you know what is a good deal for you, and how do you know what that deal is going to look like, once your renovation is done, and everything, and what the market is going to look like? How do you kind of predict those things? Because if I'm seeing this upswing, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, I'm just throwing
Mhm.
logic in here that may not apply at all. So tell me this: if there is an upswing now in price and value, is there a down? There's got to be a downswing coming in the future, right? So how do you kind of attest these? How do you vet out these deals and kind of understand the lifespan of these deals and what that's going to look like? 6 months now when the work's done.
Yeah. So the big thing is that you can't really predict the market, but you can be conservative in how you think the market is going to go. For instance, like Atlanta right now, where I live, is incredibly overpriced. Like pretty much every deal we look at is way above what makes financial sense. And for that reason, we haven't been putting any offers in apartments in Atlanta. One deal we have is in Little Rock, which is an emerging
Mhm.
market. So I think that taking advantage of certain markets that aren't as hot is almost like being contrarian in a way, because everybody's rushing to Atlanta, everybody's rushing to Dallas. But like these markets are overpriced, so a lot of people are paying. And I mean, it may work out in the end. It may work out. We may still be on this upward trend for the time that they hold that property. But as for my company, we're not going to bank on that because we don't know the market. If the market falls out from under us, we don't want to get caught with our pants down and have an asset that we pay way too much for.
Sure.
So we want to assume that things may take a turn for the worse. So we have to be able to handle that in acquisitions. We have somebody like, and I work in a broader team, and we have someone specifically that does broker relations because we want to get deals off market before they get in passed out or before they're listed on the broker website. There's no deal that is 100% off market, but you can find deals that are a little less competitive by just putting the work into relationships. And then once you buy right, everybody in real estate says you make money when you buy. So if you have those relationships that can lead to deals where you can acquire the property at a lower purchase price, then you greatly mitigate that risk of the market falling and then you not being able to recover from it.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And tell me, I like what you just said about putting the work in with the relationships, how you make the money when you buy.
Mhm.
Since you've been passionate about the technology and real estate and things and building these relationships within these communities, how has your work ethic and your ability to, your learned ability to work hard been of value to you?
Man, it's really open doors. I think also not just working hard but working smart and being strategic are very important because you maximize that work when you're strategic about it. Like I can tell you that work ethic and willing sacrifices open doors for me. I started my career in real estate a few years ago, but I didn't start really getting into commercial real estate until last year, and it was like just a ridiculous amount of work and time. Read several books. I invested in probably 20 to 30 hours of online video courses where I learned how to underwrite commercial properties. And then once I spent like a few months doing that and getting a good grasp on things, I started putting a lot of that time into networking. So it's like a layered approach. It was first kind of understanding qualitative knowledge, then learning that skill of underwriting, and then going out there and networking and using that what I learned to be able to add value to other people. And it was at a point where I had so many meetings on my calendar because I was trying to meet as many people as possible. I was going to different networking
Sure.
events and having one-on-one conversation and follow-ups from those events. And because of that, I was able to network into a partnership that already had a lot of experience. The people I'm working with, they have collectively probably 100 years of experience because they've been doing this for so long. And I was able to get into that group because of the work that I put in. And like they needed somebody to underwrite deals, and they had tried a few different people, but I was the one that was willing to be working till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, even though I have a W-2 in order to get the deals back to them in a timely manner. So because of that work and willing to sacrifice in the beginning, that brought me on into a partnership and now have an equity stake in a commercial deal, even though I really haven't been doing this that long.
Sure. And so how, you said that your first venture with kind of the wholesaling, the bird dogging aspect of real estate wasn't a success for you. How is it that someone can, someone that we have someone out there in our audience right now, I'm sure, that is very interested in taking the approach that you took of kind of permeating themselves into the real estate market. Where would you say is stop one for that person to develop some of the skills that you've developed in the real estate world?
I'll say the first thing is making the decision. Like if it takes, reading some stuff and figuring out, you really need to make a decision and figure out that real estate is what you want to do. I think that's the case with anything, any venture. You have to make a decision and not turn back because persistence is going to be the driving thing to learn anything. If you're not persistent about it, then you'll never get anywhere because once that first roadblock comes, you'll stop. So first making that decision and then starting to get educated and learn, all right, where exactly do I want to fit it into this market? And then as you learn more, you get exposed to more. And the more time you spend in it, you start to figure out your path. And then with each thing that you learn more about yourself and what you need to learn next. So I think a lot of times people want to wait for all the lights to be green before they leave the house, but you gotta just go. You gotta start driving, and then you'll hit a red light, and then you gotta figure out how to get past that, and then it'll turn green, and you get to the next step and the next step. So first it's like just getting started, then getting educated and start forging your path. But I recommend podcasts such as yours, books on the subject. You just got to kind of gain knowledge, and it's something that it takes time to develop.
Sure. And it takes time to develop that, the skill to learn. That's
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
you got from engineering school that I think probably goes unsaid for a lot of people is that you knew how to learn. You
yeah.
knew how that process worked for you personally, that, hey, here's how I take in information and retain it. And I'm going to apply a lot of that same logic to what I'm doing in the real estate world. Just a follow up to that is, as you develop those skills, as someone within our audience or yourself is developing those skills, becoming, qualitative, acquiring qualitative knowledge, really educating themselves, reading the books, listening to the podcast, networking, what skills should they be on the lookout, to develop that are going to have an impact? Man, maybe I can ask you this way is, what skills have you developed through this learning phase, through, the networking phase, to really understanding early on in your business that you have to have the ability to underwrite, have the ability to assess deals. What other skills, passive skills, have you developed along the way that other people can probably look to kind of obtain if they take that same route?
Yeah. One I would say it's good to be able to sell. That's a skill that I think a lot of people don't really think about. And I actually read a book on sales by Zig Ziglar. It's like one of the classic books on sales. In sales, a lot of time we think of like, oh, I'm selling a product, or I'm selling a service, but sales is really just persuading somebody to do something that will benefit them. That's all sales is. That can be in a job interview. If I'm sitting across from a hiring manager, I want to persuade him to hire, persuade him or her to hire me because I'm the best guy for the role, or I will bring value to their business. And that goes with any relationships. Like that's the biggest thing. You got to understand how to first maximize your value or figure out like what you can bring to the table that's valuable and be able to relay that value to somebody else because that's going to be key in finding you business partners or finding you clients or even winning deals. Like you got to be able to sell the person that or the broker, sell them on the fact that you can close on this deal. Like that's one of the things that I think it often goes overlooked. So sales is a big skill in just learning how to talk to people. um, I'll say that's the most universal. And then The second one is just really being consistent in your relationships, your networking. I think you're great with that. Like I remember when we first met at Real Estate Connections, we talked for a few minutes. I'm like, I've known this guy for so long. It's like that in itself is a skill. Being able to charm people, being able to get them to like you and want to work with you. It's not necessarily manipulative, but that goes a long way in being able to get what you want down the road.
Sure. And so tell me, like you've developed these skills. You're learning networking, you're learning sales, you're learning real estate, you're learning all of these different things just about the business world. One thing that I think goes kind of undersaid in this whole equation is your understanding of technology.
Mm.
You through learning about the technology world, I'm sure that you are like I am, and Tristan is in the marketing world, where we're constantly looking for tools and opportunities that can make our lives easier and better. You develop an eye for those things, and like not even an eye, like a nose for those things. Like you can smell, like, hey, I can look at this thing and like I know that if I use this the right way, it's going to be good for my business. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because if you
Yeah,
develop an eye for it, you're just catching on to the marketing. But really being able to say, hey, I can apply this here and it's going to be good for me, I think that's a skill within itself. And the beautiful thing about this is that, we're going to put this podcast out to where a ton of people in the real estate community are going to hear it. We're going to send it out to some people in the real estate community, and they're going to sit there and think as you kind of lay out that question originally and say, I think that Brandon is someone that I should know because he's going to create tools in the real estate world that are going to be valuable for me. So you
right.
all you bet you kind of have one more lens. You know what I mean? Is like you take it one step further when you look at these things and you say, okay, here's a problem that maybe I don't, we talked about hard work earlier, but maybe I don't have to solve this problem with good old fashioned purebred hard work. Maybe there's something that I can
Mhm.
create that makes my life and your life and everyone else's life a little bit easier. So I
Right.
think that as you continue down that road and you have that kind of nose for identifying those problems and shortcoming within that prop tech market, that you're gonna do really, really well. Um, I have to ask, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you do?
In terms of like the real estate or like the engineering,
Oh,
like
just
just
in general, if you weren't on the real estate technology path that you're on right now, what do you see yourself, being passionate, spending all your time doing?
hmm. um that is a good question. Uh I would say like if I wasn't in real estate, I'd probably be more focused on the corporate side of things. Like right now I currently work for a large beverage manufacturer in Atlanta. Um was thinking like long term at one point I may be interested in working for a tech company just because it's kind of exciting, like working for Apple or Google.
Yeah, it's definitely a
Um,
different vibe.
yeah, and like just and also just especially like if I was to move out to the Bay Area, that'd be pretty cool. Just change the scenery. I've been in Atlanta my whole life,
Sure.
pretty much. So
Yeah, take me with you. I'll go in half on a condo. We're gonna need it. So it's gonna be $5,000 a month for us to live out there. But
right, right.
yeah. Well, I guess you'll know. Yeah, you've forged some relationships for us out there, and get somebody to cut us a condo deal for $1,200 a month, and I'll go with you for sure. But that's pretty cool, man. I mean, just getting to know you and understanding kind of your personality in general has been interesting to me. Because like I said, I identify with those people that think like athletes. I identify with those people that think
Mhm.
competitively and continue to grow their skills. So I think you're a really good resource for anybody that's looking to have some questions answered and what that investing in technology space looks like for real estate. So tell us how we get in touch with you if we want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Brandon Dumbuya. Brandon spelled normally with an O N. And then Dumbuya, Dumbuya. So that's the best way to reach out to me. And also, you can reach out to me by email at brandon.dumbuya@gmail.com.
Cool. And then our and you kind of make up a portion of our ideal audience. Our ideal audience, and hopefully the people that are listening right now are those people that are seeking to kind of carve out their space in the entrepreneurship world, whether that
Mhm.
is gaining the skills, creating the network, making that decision about what business they want to be in, like all the pointers that you gave us earlier. Um, Tell us what burned the ship and really deciding to go in on your own business and really say, hey, this is the path that I'm going to carve out for myself, even as you still have your W-2 job and everything. Tell me what that power has meant for your business as far as making that decision to say, hey, I'm going to do this, as well as kind of what you think about other people that are leveraging that same decision. How do you think that they should kind of qualify what it is that they should do and how they should make their next step?
Yeah, so in terms of me, like really putting on the gas, I'll say so my father passed away last year January, prior to the pandemic,
Sorry to hear that, sir.
and oh yeah, no, it's fine. But I think the one of the big things, because I was already kind of on this path, I already had started my company, but since then it's been more focused, primarily because after he was passed, the question that came up like who's gonna take care of the family. So it just felt like there was a lot more pressure, a lot more weight, and more responsibility, and because of that, it's been like all gas, no brakes since then. Also, it got to a point like in the last year, I was very close to burnout because, like, on my vacation from work, I was still working every single day on real estate, even longer hours than like I was for my W-2. So it's been, um, I say that was one of the biggest things that kind of made me like really focus in and hone in. As far as other people who are trying to make that decision, I think the biggest thing is first understanding what you want to do with your life. Like, where do you want to go long term? Like, I spend time every single day meditating and visualizing the future that I want for myself and for my family. And also just reflecting. I also journal every day to reflect on like where I am now, where how things are going on a daily basis. And you learn so much about yourself. You learn a lot from your current situation and your reflections, and you learn a lot about where you want to go in your visualization. And then that really kind of drives you to figure out how do I go from point A to point B, because you have more understanding and more clarity on where you are now, and then you start to figure out the path. So I'll say that's the biggest thing is understand where you go 10, 15, 20 years from now. That really has a lot more impact on the decisions you need to make right now than a lot of people tend to think. Because any venture, any endeavor worth doing, especially one of these big monstrous endeavors, is going to take a lot of runway to figure it out, a lot of runway to figure it out. And that's why so many of them fail, because they want to make a 1 year, 2 year goal, and they don't give themselves enough runway to get such a large endeavor off the ground. So it's like you got to have that long-term planning, and that'll really help influence what your very next step is.
Sure. Well, I think you've given us a lot of tidbits here. You've given us a lot of gold in this podcast. Definitely given me plenty to think about. So I'm interested in kind of continuing this relationship. Continuing to get to know you and making sure that we feed off each other because I like the energy that you have and the approach that you have to your business. So I'm looking forward to taking everything that we can out of this, and putting it out there to the world, and hopefully some other people kind of create some traction from this. And I'm really looking forward to kind of having you within our family and seeing if we can continue to make some connections for you that are valuable. So I appreciate all the tidbits that you've given us today, and any help that we can be to you or our audience. I'm sure that those people are very giving. Us and the people that really identify with us and our brand are very giving people and give intentionally. So looking to make some connections for you, make some value for you, and hopefully we can continue this conversation, my friend. I think that you're off to the races. I think it's going to go well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on as well. Let's burn the ship.
All right, glad to be on. Thank you.